So great to see you.
Okay, so what I found is a lot of archives. The Dues Pair tried so hard to remove all the ESO videos. And it's weird because I didn't really talk to Shuli, I guess, for over 2 years. I know he was friends with ESO for a long time, but we have a lot of shows that he tried to delete. He doesn't realize there's a way you can get every single YouTube show, whether you make them private, whether you delete them, you can get them. It just takes a little bit more work. But here we go. We got the Dues Pair, and we know Isolino there. And apparently the Dues Pair didn't know what was going on behind the scenes.
Same to you, my friend.
We got a hot one. We got a hot one in the chamber. Number two, I feel like I have to talk about this today because it was the first time my name had been mentioned on the show since I left. And I think it's a pretty big deal. Would love for it to have been my boss, but, you know.
So Shuli's talking about this is the first time Howard actually even mentioned that Shuli left. And it's not just Shuli. Howard has this weird thing about people leaving. A lot of times he's upset when they leave. Other times he just doesn't mention it. Some of them have contractual obligations for which they cannot disclose that they left. And Howard cannot disparage, so he won't even talk about it.
It was a slow adult. That's a personal friend of mine that repped. And I love him for it. And I want to get into this, man. I want to get into my relationship with High Pitch Eric. I'm gonna text you an email. I need you to send that person the link because they want to watch the show for free.
That's interesting. You have the Dues Pair there texting and emailing with Isolino. I hope all the authorities know what's going on with that thing.
So my relationship with Eric goes back to the Vegas days. He showed up to Vegas with his crew at that time, which was Double A, Irish John, and Eddie the Produce Guy.
Losers.
And I'll never forget, I picked them up at the airport. That's what a super fan
bigger loser
I was. Is Eric messaged me. I think that message board was out at the time, the Howard Stern message board, and he asked me for a ride from the airport to the Hard Rock, and I picked him and Double A up and Irish John, and we all packed in my I think it was a Ford Tempo at the time I had.
Loser.
And I drove him over there, and for me it was great. I was hanging out with these guys, you know, with Eric, who I've listened to for years, and Double A, and they were.
What's happening is Shuli behind the scenes is getting to him. He's like, oh, Vince is doing this, Vince is doing that. And we know the Dues Pair has a lot of paranoid thoughts. And Vince is doxing this, and Vince is on Twitter, and all these different things. And unfortunately, Bob doesn't give a shit that much, but he does get influenced by him.
It was fun. We had a great time. That was the first time Eric got stoned. I got him stoned. Yeah, I got him stoned for the first time
I'd
ever.
love to hear that story.
And again, I had no connection to the show other than being a fan and calling.
Wackpacker.
And then I get out to New York. I had a spot at Caroline's. I'd been doing stand-up, but I was a feature, a really good host, but I was a feature spot at best.
So Shuli's claiming he was a host, but he got a feature spot at Caroline's. The only way that Caroline's would give him that is if he was already working for the show and they know that he could potentially sell some tickets, or there was an off night, a charity night. We run a charity, and we have a lot of comedians that come in at Caroline's once a year, but other than that, he must have been on the show at that point.
Yes. I hadn't been anywhere but Vegas, and casino crowds, it's not a comedy club crowd. So I get to New York. It's Caroline's on Broadway, legendary venue. This is a big deal for me. And I called two people to come to the show, Eric and Boots. And it was...
I never heard the story before. So apparently he performed at Caroline's, and he called up Joey Boots, as we know, Joe Basilino, and High Pitch.
Important for me to have Boots there because Joey Boots was honest to a fault. Yeah, he had his issues. He'd be the first to tell you about it. But the guy was honest to every single person's face. Didn't matter who they were, race, gender, didn't matter. If Joey saw something or had an issue or had praise, he would do it in a second. And it was important for me, not that Joey was a be-all, end-all of comedy or even in the stand-up.
I remember this. You know that I represented Joey a few times throughout his life before he died, and he told me that he saw the Dues Pair. I didn't put two and two together here, but let me hear what the Dues Pair said.
But it was important for me to have a guy there who would be honest with me, my set. who would tell me, hey, you got to write some better shit, or this isn't for you, or like I knew I could do it, but now here I am in New York. This is top of the food chain. Like here, it doesn't matter who you know. You know, in New York, it matters if you're funny. That's it.
First of all, it matters if you could sell seats. That's tickets. That's a real issue for the most part. In these small clubs like Caroline's, it's a matter of whether you can sell tickets or not, depending on the night, obviously. But look who he brings. He brings a mentally retarded guy, my good buddy High Pitch Eric, and Joey Boots, who knows nothing about that type of comedy. You see Joey's comedy, it's on the street. It's not stand-up comedy. Joey's not a stand-up comedian.
Was honest, and they both came out, and he gave me such praise and put so much wind in my sails, which sounds weird because you're like, well, who the fuck is Joey Boots in stand-up comedy? It's not about that. It's about people being real with.
So right after this, Joey and I were going through a big case that he settled, and he goes, Vince, Shuli bombed, and I didn't know what to do. High Pitch had no idea because High Pitch doesn't know about comedy. So I told him he did amazing, and he believed it apparently. So I told Boots, I'm like, well, why don't you just give the guy some real criticism? And I didn't know Shuli that well, but he's like, I couldn't. It would break my heart. He's like, I just could not tell him. He invited High Pitch there and myself. They gave us drinks and everything else. So he's like, I just told him that he was good, and I never told Shuli this. And obviously now Joey Basilino's dead, so my attorney-client privilege with him has now ceased. But yeah, I never was able to release it, and I never connected the two because I didn't really know who Shuli was. I knew him loosely, but obviously I was friends with Joey.
Where you stand. But here's the truth, whether management there wants to hear it or not. Here's the truth about why I got what I got from the Wackpack.
So the newspaper is describing how he was able to excel from being a Wackpacker to actually utilizing the Wackpackers, exploiting the Wackpackers for the show. And that's the way it goes. I will say this, Shuli did a great job doing it. When I was loosely connected to Shuli, I always admired the fact that he did treat the Wackpackers with respect. Now, was he doing it just so he can exploit them better? Maybe, but that's his job. And when I say exploit, that's what an employer/employer relationship is an exploitation of someone's services, and you compensate them for their time. He, to his credit, was always kind to these guys, to the point where if we were playing something with Eric, he would call me up, and I said it before, crying and yelling at me, defending them, not realizing that High Pitch Eric probably doesn't have the truth behind him, but he was always respectful to them. And I will give that to the Deuce Pair. I'm not going to take that away from him.
And why it's so hard for everybody else. Because that, to me, wasn't a job. That, to me, was a gift.
And the point here of what he's saying is, once he left, he's looking at the people that took over his job of Wackpack wrangling, and he's saying they're not doing as good a job as he did.
For me, I'm the type of person that loves interesting people. I love the stories. It's not about the toys. It's about the stories. It's about the life experiences. And there's a big thing with the Wackpack. To get the greatest stuff from them, the coherent ones that you can't call as a washing machine and get a 10-minute conversation with them, the somewhat coherent ones, they got to trust you. That's all it is. And I'm not sitting here gonna bash Wolfie. I have no beef with Wolfie. Wolfie's in there. He's trying to work. He's got a job now. He's towing the line. All the power to you, brother. But I will say this. You are coming off like a cop to a handful. He's not the only one. He's told me, I don't want to talk to Wolfie. He was legit upset about that thing in Pennsylvania.
He's referring to High Pitch Eric. And how great is it when you leave a business, you want your customers, your clients to come with you. And you get such pleasure when your business fails without you. It makes you feel like you had some worth. And that's really what the dues payer is saying here. He's saying, in a nice way, Wolfie's not doing as great a job as he is. And High Pitch Eric doesn't want to work with Wolfie. And therefore, Howard's show is going to suffer somehow.
When I was doing a show, and I bring Eric out at the very end, when I'm done doing my hour set, then I bring Eric on as a surprise.
Oh, God. Can you imagine sitting through an hour of the dues payer set? Oh, my God. And I don't want to criticize him for trying. You have to fail, 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 fail. But he doesn't practice. That's the real issue. He does not simulate his stand-up, nor does he look to get any better at it. And if he's not doing it anymore, then he doesn't have to.
It's because I didn't promote it at the time because I didn't want to get in trouble at work. But also I didn't promote it because I needed to break out of that on stage. But I also am like, with my show, stand-up, and my podcast, I'm never going to tell anybody no. If you want to come on here, you're more than welcome. I'm not going to give you shit for what you do outside of here. You have a life. You do what you got to do. And so for me, when I'm...
Maybe you should have told Isolino what he couldn't do outside of your job. And again, I had no idea how intimate these two guys were. All the videos that they tried to delete that we got indicate a real passionate likeness/love for each other. I had no idea. Even the fans liked Isolino. No idea that he was even part of the show.
Talking to, a guy like High Pitch and he tells me something odd, you can't be like, whoa, what? What'd you just say? You have to literally respond without batting an eye.
I taught the Dewsbury that exact method when you're dealing with people that are a little bit crazy, like High Pitch. And I told him, when High Pitch threatens me or threatens my family, I never react. What he's looking for at his IQ level is a reaction. So if you don't react to the comments, then he'll move on from it.
You know what I mean? And
there's an art to it.
There's an art to it because then you're not judging them in that moment, right? And listen, I'm not coming off like a saint here. I know what I did there for 15 years.
We don't.
But at the end of the day, no matter who I brought information to about on the air, there was never any hard feelings afterwards, because no one spent more time on the phone with these people. No one spent more time in contact in person. Yeah, it was my job, but to the extent that I took it to wasn't part of my job. I wanted to be the best in that field because those people, the Wackpack, brought so much entertainment to me for so many years that for me it was like...
I love when Wackpackers don't know or acknowledge that they're in the Wackpack. I believe Shuli knows that he's in the Wackpack. And again, he wasn't a great Wackpacker. We went through an entire show on how he ranks. He's obviously a clear Wackpacker. He just wasn't a great Wackpacker.
These guys are gold. And I went through, I think, 2 different or 3 different edicts while I was there in 15 years. No more Wackpack. Too much Wackpack. And a lot of people in my place would have just stopped and would have just went on to something else. I'll start doing prank calls. Fuck that.
Not our Dewsbury. He's got grit. He persevered, and he said, I am going to make something of these Wackpackers.
That wasn't my mentality. My mentality was, I'm going to bring you back something so good, you're not going to have a choice but to have the Wackpack on. And I did it consistently. I went to court with Eric when he almost went to jail for Fred the Elephant Boy. But I also called him out on his shit when he would threaten people. It was a family thing. It was like a brother thing. And I know there's people working there that are like, wait, friends with these people? Yeah. That to me, on a personal level, I can't go on and bullshit people for years pretending to give a shit about them.
And that's what made Shuli successful at the job, because he was a Wackpacker and then transitioned to actually associating with the Wackpacker, because it takes one to know one, is a really good statement there, because he was able to elicit a lot of information from the various Wackpackers. I told him personally I hated that underdog lady thing. I know that was his thing. I didn't like the tan mom thing. Obviously, Eric Sean Lynch was my favorite, and High Pitch as well. Not as a character, just as a person.
I got asked to teach a comedy class in
Oh, no, you didn't.
in Vegas. Comedy school, which I turned down. They offered me really good money, and I was making nothing at the time, and I turned it down because the reality of it is you can't teach comedy.
Yes, you can.
You can't teach somebody to be tall, right? You're either born tall.
The Dewsbury is saying that comedy is innate, meaning you're born with it. Don't you love when white people say that, where you can't become better at comedy, can't teach comedy? The only time in life you ever learn anything is when you teach it. In learning, you will teach, and in teaching, you will learn. And I don't like all these cliche statements, but it's goddamn true. You have to teach something in order to learn it.
All or you're not. And so now, let's say a class of 10 people, 3 of them are funny, I have to now bullshit these other 7 people for
What do you think they did when you took the class?
5 weeks that they have a shot at this? I got to sleep at night, man. It's why I wasn't good as a blackjack dealer. I would tell people under my breath, get off the table. I'm on a hot streak right now. Like, I would try to help.
Dues Pair, you're a fucking liar. You weren't good as a blackjack dealer because you were doing weed, you were doing drugs, and you got busted. That's the only reason why you stopped being a blackjack dealer. You graduated from one school, Blackjack College, and I commend you for that. It's not easy. When I see those blackjack things, I can't do any math. My brain just stops with damn math and blackjack. So you were able to do that. Somehow you were good with counting and money. Somehow. But once you graduated, that your dad paid for, then your dad paid for you to go and get your hair dyed because you thought somehow the drug test would not be detected. Your drug use wouldn't be detected if they used the hair on your head when you had it. And then they plucked the hair from your arm and you failed the drug test. It wasn't because you couldn't sleep at night. Don't rewrite history, Dues Payer. I like you, but don't rewrite history.